Plant passports. If you sell plants and post them out, you'll need a plant passport. Plant passports. What are they? Why do we need them? And who needs them? This video is intended for basically people that sell the odd plant and sell them on eBay or online on Facebook and post them out to people all over the country or even all over Europe. It's not really intended for big companies. It'd be great if you are watching this, but I'm sure you've got all the paperwork, you've done all the research that's needed to be able to issue plant passports for the plants that you sell and produce. So, what are plant passports? Well, basically, plant passports are a recording system for plants that are produced and grown and sold in the UK and the EU. And the new regulations came into effect halfway through December last year in 2019, and it's, like I said, it's a way of recording the movements of plants, and the main reason that they've been brought in is to see if there's an outbreak of a disease or some sort of issue. They can be traced back to the originating place and then can be dealt with at source, and also record and recall any plants that have been sold to other nurseries and deal with them appropriately. They have the same sort of regulations for the meat industry and for food industry with batch numbers, etc. So you can find out where the suppliers, where the plants, where the food or the meat has come from, etc. So most people, if you've watched this video, will be thinking, well, it doesn't affect me. I just sell the odd plant on eBay or on a Facebook page, something like that. But the new regulations cover any sales of any plants that are going to be posted out to people that are sold. So it says any plants for planting, so this includes all plants that you're going to put in your garden, also includes any plants that you're going to sell as a house plant or anything like that. So it's pretty much, it is all plants, and it also covers some seeds such as some beans and peas, seed potatoes, and some actual fruit as well. But this is really concerned with plants, because that's what most people will be dealing with. Now, because it's new legislation, new regulations, then there's quite a lot of grey areas and people not completely up to date with what and how it will affect sort of hobbyist growers, which is what this video is intended to cover. I'm not going to go into great detail on absolutely every little part of the whole plant selling industry and all the regulations that covers it. Obviously, if you sell plants yourself, it's great that you're watching this video, but please contact the relevant government authority for your country and get information direct from the source. So in the UK, it's the Gov website, and then it'll be the Animal and Plant Health Organisation that you contact directly to get the information to questions that you need, your specific circumstances. So please contact them directly. Don't listen to what other people say or do what other people might be doing on groups. Just actually do the work yourself and contact them, and ideally do it in email and you've got a written response, because I know lots of people have been phoning up and getting one story, and then other people have been phoning up as well and hearing different things. So if you get it in writing, you've got it as evidence to say that you're following the regulations as they have been set out to you. So saying all that, let's quickly go over what a plant passport is. It's basically a label or some sort of document attached to a plant or a consignment of plants. So when they are sold to a nursery, for instance, then all the information about that plant, where it's grown, etc. will be on there, the species as well. and there's lots of information. I'll just put on the screen now a little label of a newly created label for Plant Passport, which shows the species name as well as the details of where it's grown, and also the unique identifier of that supplier as well. So if you're going to just sell the odd plant, like sometimes I've done that in the past as well, if you're going to sell it and it's sent out in the post, you need a plant passport. If you sell a plant to be picked up, you don't need a plant passport, so you can carry on selling plants online, saying for pick up only, collection only. You don't need a plant passport, you don't need to watch the rest of this video, you're fine. If you do ever send out plants, then you do need a plant passport, even if it's just the odd 1 or 2 plants a year. So to get authorization to issue plant passports, so doing all the documentation, you need to contact the Animal and Plant Health Agency to be set up, and it's quite simple to do that. Some forms to fill out, there's no cost up front to do that, but there are costs associated with inspections, because once you're set up to authorise to create the plant passports, then you need to be inspected, or theoretically need to be inspected. I think the whole system's been set up for obviously big businesses and nurseries to definitely be inspected several times a year, or at least yearly. For individual sellers, very unlikely that you're going to get inspected, but if you do, you've got a minimum, I think it's about £123 minimum for the inspection. Basically, an inspector will come to your premises where you're growing plants and see your records, see how you're growing plants, and look at the plants and possibly take samples as well of like the soil and the plant tissues, etc., and ask you various questions. And this can take maybe half an hour, it might take an hour, who knows. If you've got a big setup, it might take a long time, and you're getting charged according to the website where this is being laid out in regulations. You get charged for the time, the journey time from wherever the inspector is moving from to your location, and for the time of doing the paperwork as well associated with inspecting your setup. So it might become very costly to the amateur hobbyist person who's selling a few plants, and you can probably think it's probably not worth doing it. And in many cases, I think that will be the case for lots of people, because if you're going to spend several £100s a year on inspections and paperwork as well, then it's probably not worth you doing sales. But that's a decision for you to make, obviously. If you're doing collection only, then none of that matters. If people are coming to your address to pick up a plant you've sold online, then it's fine. Now, what about all the paperwork? Well, if you do issue in plant passports, then it does mean that you need to keep all the paperwork for at least 3 years of all the plants that you have sourced, or where you got the plants from, and also where you've sent all the plants. So you've got to keep data protection in mind as well. So there's a lot of paperwork and regulations to get your head around if you're doing this, if you're just a hobbyist person. But obviously big companies and nurseries will be used to this sort of paperwork, because it's part of a business, part of the business that you'll need to do. Now, are there ways around sending out plants in the post and not having a plant passport? Well, yes, there probably are. You could send out plants for free and just charge for postage, but that probably won't work, because then if they want to collect it, they're going to get a free plant, because there's no cost for the plant, it's just for postage. And even if you did say you're just going to post out plants and you can't pick up, and somebody wants to return a plant for whatever reason, it's damaged or anything, they're not going to be happy that you say, well, you're not getting a refund because the cost of the plant is zero. So in the long term, that's definitely not going to work. Obviously, you can still send out plants to people as gifts without having to do a plant passport. So people can cover the cost of postage, and you can send out plants in the post that way, and that's totally fine without a plant passport. But that isn't on the business side of things, that's just doing it as a swap or as a friendly gesture. So also you've got to think about, is everybody else going to do this? So if you're selling plants and you're going to go along the lines of actually getting plant passports and issuing them, if you know other people aren't doing that, then they need to be reported basically. And that's where it gets difficult, because what's going to happen online is people are selling plants, and I've stopped selling plants personally because they can't afford the cost of plant passports, but see other people sending them out, then obviously they're going to get reported, and they should be reported because they're not following the new regulations. Another question people have been asking is what happens after the UK leaves the EU, because it's a European directive this, then well, probably it'll carry on the same, at least until the transition period, and to be honest it'll probably carry on in this form or similar going forward, because the whole point of plant passports is to reduce and limit the spread of diseases, and if they are found anywhere then at least they can be contained and go back to source to deal with those. If you remember, a couple of years ago they brought in the laws on lots of different plants coming into just the UK, specifically from Europe and everywhere else, in terms of certain diseases, things like olives and palm trees, which could potentially have Xylella, or some of the moths that grubs eat into the palms, for instance. They were restricted coming into the UK, so nobody could import palms of a certain size. There's lots of diseases and measures the government are trying to bring in to stop the spread of diseases, because we don't want it getting into crops and the food chain, etc. So I think it'll still carry on after we've left the EU from the UK perspective. What about if you're selling plants to people from your garden for like an open day, like a garden open day, or just random few sales for a charity event or something like that? Well, you don't need plant passports for that, because you are selling them to the end user and they are picking them up from your premises, so you don't need to issue plant passports, which really means the whole system's a little bit, it's not fully covering disease spreading, because there's going to be lots of random little sales like that which potentially could mean diseases spreading, but I suppose that's minute compared to the great big wholesalers and the great big plant nurseries that sell thousands and thousands of plants. So that's why I suppose that's not covered. What about if you buy plants and you sell them at car boot sales and things? Well, as far as I understand it, you can do that without plant passports or at plant fairs, because you're selling to the end user. If you're selling on to other retailers, then they do need plant passports, but if you're selling to the end user, then you don't need plant passports. But that is a little bit of a grey area. There's been lots of people asking questions like that to the authorities and getting different answers, as mentioned earlier in this video. So I have been following all the posts online, all the chatter, which includes hobbyists, some smaller nurseries and some bigger nurseries, and lots of individuals have been asking questions and emailing and phoning the authorities and been getting slightly different answers, or been interpreting regulations slightly differently. So it's a bit of a grey area for hobbyists and doing smaller sales. I would advise anybody that are selling plants to people online that are going to be posted out to definitely look at the relevant website. I'll put the links on below in the description of this video. Read it all, interpret it how you wish, but basically once you've read it, please contact the relevant authorities to get the answers in writing so that you feel confident that you can sell plants with the relevant paperwork, or decide, you know what, it's going to be too much effort this and not enough benefit for doing this, I will carry on selling plants. For me personally, I will sell plants at open days in the garden here, and also sell plants for pickup only from time to time as well. So this video, yeah, I hope this has been a little bit enlightening. It's just about one topic, it's about regulation. It's a bit dry, it's not like my normal videos, but it's important because you've probably gone to a garden centre recently and think, well, what's this label with all these details on? Now you know what that is, and now you know if you're going to sell the odd plant online, unfortunately you do need a plant passport if it's going to be posted, if it's going to be picked up, you don't need a plant passport. I hope that's cleared up a few things. There's probably lots of questions you have, put them in the comments below. Obviously I'm not the authorities, so please contact the relevant authorities for the definitive answers. Thanks for watching.